Welcome back to our series ranking every boss in Soulsborne. Today is part 7, so if you've missed the previous videos, we highly recommend watching them, as 1, they're pretty good, and 2, you may expect a few bosses to be in here that didn't quite make the cut, so check them out. Lastly, with the Shadow of the Erdtree bosses, we will not be including them in the rest of our rankings, but they'll be in the final combined ranking at the end of this series where we put all 9 parts into one larger video. As always, thank you to our patrons for continuing to support us, and with that said, let's get into the ranking.
Number 50, Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. Shardbearer though she may be, I can't help but feel that Renala is a bit of an ugly duckling amongst the big bosses of Elden Ring. Not in the sense that she's bad or anything, but rather that she is blatantly the easiest one by a massive margin. Godric is by no means a ballbuster, but he's killed me a couple times before to be sure. Renala is pretty much Pinwheel with the visuals jacked up to 11 in coolness, but you know what? That's okay, seriously, it's hard not to have at least a decently high opinion of any boss with a dope-looking giant laser attack the way I see it, and it's satisfying as all hell to see the crazy damage you can do to that health bar of hers with the right tools, a rare treat in a game where most bosses seem to have HP pools that would barely move if you forced a nuclear warhead into their esophagus. Her phase transition cutscene looks like it's from Bayonetta to me, which is also mildly amusing. The biggest thing to watch out for is her summons, which can be a little spooky normally and definitely spooky on a Rune level 1 run like I'm in the middle of conducting right now. I actually died to her like 3 times because I'd get greedy only for a summoned troll to spawn above my head and flatten me into a fruit by the foot. Let that be a lesson to you all that even the lowliest of foes can be deadly if you do not practice proper discipline. That's a Confucius quote, probably.
Number 49, Velstadt the Royal Aegis. Coolest outfit of all time? Maybe. It's pretty subjective. I don't even know why I said that. If I'm wearing armor in Souls 2, I'm probably walking around with the Velstadt set you can buy from Mifflin. I think a boss's armor being a popular fashion Souls choice is honestly a sign of respect. You never see anybody wearing the Keeper of the Old Lord set, but in any fashion Souls compilation there'll be some Smelter Demon, Smo, Artorias, Gundyr. Basically, if you're good, you get worn. And Velstadt gets worn. Not only is he one of the best looking bosses in Dark Souls 2, he's also one of the coolest in lore. Velstadt was one of Vendrick's 2 protectors alongside Raim. One day, Velstadt and Raim fought each other for unknown reasons and Raim was defeated. He was then exiled by Vendrick and left Drangliak in search of greater power, eventually becoming Fume Knight, while Velstadt stayed behind to protect the king. For the record, this is why Fume Knight skips to phase 2 if you walk in wearing the full Velstadt set. Following the Nashandra debacle, Velstadt followed Vendrick into the Undead Crypt and protected him in his exile until the two succumbed to the Undead Curse, becoming hollows from overexposure to dark. Thus, the cool zombie we find outside the not as cool zombie's tomb. The main thing I like about Velstadt is his weapon. The Sacred Chime Hammer is not only very good, but one of my favorite looking weapons I've ever seen in a video game. In the fight specifically, the rings it makes when he moves adds a lot to the theme, which is on its own an already epic score, and the way he initiates phase 2 with the hammer is one of the better moments in Souls 2. While the fight is generally the same throughout, Velstadt is yet another case of Souls 2 laying the foundations for phase evolution in Souls fights, with an increase in damage and defense and even a couple new hex moves after he reaches half health. In my opinion, Velstadt the Royal Aegis unquestionably deserves a place among the 50 best bosses in Soulsborne, but if you disagree, let us know why in the comments.
Number 48, Gehrman, the First Hunter. Gehrman is more than meets the eye in more ways than one. His facade of being an invalid geezer who dry humps mannequins in his free time is all for show, with the end of the hunter's dream bringing out his feisty side for a final showdown. While he may not be too tricky in a normal playthrough, at blood level 4 this fight is absolutely brutal. That's not the standard by which I rated him here, by the way, but just thought that I should mention that under those conditions he is bar none the hardest main game boss, and in my opinion harder than Ludwig as well, for that matter. The main appeal of this fight are the music and the arena to me, as well as the rather unusual motivation Gehrman has for fighting you. Bloodborne has the very funny distinction of being the only game I can recall where the easiest ending to get is the best ending, in this case being the one where Gehrman cuts your head off in the dream, causing you to wake up and go back to normal life in reality. In case the hunt, the blood, and the horrible dream did win you over somehow, he finally gets off his wheelchair to do you a solid and liberate that thick skull of yours from its fleshy throne. A hunter just like any other, he's quick as they come and handy with a gun. Instead of the usual formula of dodging a move and then punishing, a lot of the time he's nimble enough to retreat after he whiffs before you can get him back. This might sound supremely aggravating on paper, but the twist is he's not too nasty to parry and you can easily stagger him out of moves mid-combo with a well-ranged hit. I never got to play the PvP of Bloodborne because it's mind-numbingly obtuse setting it up, but I imagine it'd be something like this. While he's technically not the final boss of Bloodborne, I give him the title in an honorary capacity because the fraud presence isn't quite up to snuff like my second favorite Bloodborne old head is.
Number 47, Pthumerian Elder. Pthumerian Elder's unique component of a multi-weapon weapon makes him our second favorite of the 18 Chalice bosses. There are 18 of these guys. What the hell were they thinking? Anyways, his weapon is cool, but what really makes this fight is his teleporting. Because the Elder's constantly resetting, you never get used to him, as each time he teleports, he'll start off in the same pose, and then pull out anything from a crossbow, scythe, mace, spear, arcane magic, or more. It's pretty much impossible to predict him, and with the addition of delayed moves in the later portion of the fight, I actually prefer to just stay out of reach entirely rather than try to dodge him as he's so incalculable. Pthumerian Elder is the final boss of the Depth 3 Lower Hintertomb Chalice, so he's not incredibly challenging, but he has enough health plus deceptively high damage to leave him as a pretty well respected fight for not just us, but the Bloodborne community too.
Number 46, Manus, Father of the Abyss. Generally speaking, going back to Dark Souls 1 after playing Elden Ring feels like you're moving in slow motion. The methodical movement and lack of omnidirectional rolling are a pretty tough obstacle as far as making top-tier bosses goes, and you've likely noticed that we're already completely done with Demon Souls and largely with Dark Souls 1. But Manus takes a bold step that no other boss in the same game makes, which is that he moves with the demented ferocity that we wouldn't regularly see until Bloodborne came out in 2015. This guy is a complete animal, although I suppose it's not terribly surprising that he'd be a bit off-kilter considering he spent eons marinating in the Dark Soul and then got Frankensteined back to life by Cade, that asshole. The eternal Age of Fire versus Age of Dark debate is a funny one, because of one very misleading element, which is that pretty much every attempted Dark Lord is completely insane. It's a bit of a red herring because people think, oh, it's just as bad as the Age of Fire because the four kings are nut jobs and Manus is a wreck. Like, that's true, but you can totally be the Dark Lord and be chill about it. It's not just everybody turning into Abyss goons and fisting each other in a morgue. The Abyss and the Dark are not one-to-one the same force. I'm of the opinion that the Ashen One becomes a Dark Lord, and the little glimpse of his world we see in that ending honestly looks pretty chill. All your buddies are with you, even including your beloved wife that you impaled in the head because you felt like it. That said, Manus really has to go. But he goes out with, if not style and grace, a commendable effort to shake up the formula.
Manus is like a technological pioneer. We all appreciate what he invented, but also in the back of our minds sort of think he's lame. Like, you couldn't have done more than a big combo and some hexes? Hindsight is quite the trip. I really can't imagine what fighting Manus in 2011 must have been like, though. Even Artorias is, at his fastest, like the pace of a humanoid from Souls 2, but Manus is semi-comparative to some of the quicker bosses from Bloodborne and Souls 3, and maybe Elden Ring, but probably not. And surprisingly, Dark Souls' primitive mechanics still make it work. Manus really pushed the limits of the Souls formula for its time, and I'm confident that without his creation, we wouldn't have at least as many of the crazy modern bosses we love. Number 45, Smelter Demon. If we were still cursing without bleeping, I would drop the F-bomb freely here, for both good and bad. As much as I personally don't mind going through Iron Keep, it's a terrible area no matter how you try to spin it. I have it down to a science at this point and never really die during Smelter Demon's run-up, but that's only because I know how to bait each ninja dude one by one. But that's a ridiculous thing to say. In summary, I know how to beat an area because I can take 15 minutes carefully treading it pixel by pixel, as otherwise I'll probably just die, is essentially what I just said. Iron Keep is a big ol' piece of ass, although partially why I like Smelter Demon so much is because he feels like a reward for progressing through the feces. In my view, Smelter Demon is the pinnacle of Dark Souls 2's boss design, and makes up for the area before him in spades. This is far beyond any of the other main game Souls 2 fights, which is incredibly surprising considering this isn't even a main boss. He's almost a shoved-in challenge to provide a checkpoint between the elevator that takes you from a windmill with nothing above it to a volcano and Old Iron King, who we already covered in part 6. Not a plug. He also has a Bloodletting Beast, Headless Bloodletting Beast situation with the Blue Smelter Demon in the Iron King DLC, but I finally get to talk about the less cool but still great version of a boss for once. Literally in this series alone, I've covered Headless Bloodletting Beast, Dark Beast Parl, and Demon Fire Sage. Anyways, I'll relinquish this opportunity and explain why Smelter Demon is one of my favorite bosses in Souls in great detail. First of all, he looks cool as hell. His transformation from long dead statue to living demon when you first enter is always epic, and the design of his armor makes for the best boss set in Soulsborne, in my opinion obviously. His weapons are also epic. I like the way his physical appearance evolves in the later phases of his fight too, with more fire coming from his stomach, not to mention the sword, which ignites in flames when he stabs himself with it. I mean, how badass can you get? While visually appealing, his design is also mechanically genius. His armor prevents you from staying near him, as the fire he spouts out does constant damage over time. He toes the line perfectly between too easy and challenging, solely due to this fire, as without it, his frankly passive damage and moveset would not cut it alone. And on that note, his moveset has a cool thing going on where he has a couple different combo strings that are either 2 or 3 hits at random. He does the same RNG based thing with his AoE. Sometimes he'll hold his sword in the ground and pull it back up, and other times he'll hold it for the same amount of time and then swiftly slam it into the ground, releasing an explosion. This complexity is done even better in the Blue Smelter fight, which is why it's ranked just above this one, spoiler alert, but this is simply a CAB, cool ass boss.
Number 44, Blue Smelter Demon. Love the Smelter Demon as we do. There's no reason we should turn up our noses at the same guy but cooler. Yeah, his run-up sucks, but do you know who else has a lousy run-up? Dare I say an even worse one? Here's a hint, the area rhymes with Schmyron Keep. And the reskin complaint is a valid one regarding the game as a whole, but if we're just looking at the bosses in isolation, as we are, this too goes out the window. The constant health drain is genuinely stressful in a good way, classic push and pull as some schools of game design call it. And the attack delays, before they became a dime a dozen in Elden Ring, were a cool way at the time to throw players off who'd grown accustomed to rolling the moment they see the boss twitch a pinky. It all makes it more satisfying to pull off a dodge when you feel like you specifically timed it, and not that you just mashed circle and got lucky. Congrats to the Iron King for being an okay boss himself and making these two bad boys.
Number 43, Dancer of the Boreal Valley. Haha! I've gone from being completely unable to dodge that move to never getting hit by it, and it's because I stare at Dancer's butt. While that may not sound serious, that is actually how you do it. Lock on and lock eyes. I've always thought that this boss was, honestly, easy. Even though I get hit by her often, I'm confident in my abilities to beat her before Vort for all the consumed King Garden's Titanite so I can get my way too early +7 weapon in an OP quality build. It's pretty cool that the game gives you a range of choices with when to fight her, with a time frame of being potentially your second boss, all the way to one of your last if you beat the 3 Lords of Cinder before killing Emma. Because of that, your experience with Dancer can also range drastically, but one thing that doesn't change is how cool her cutscene is. That first time she showed up from nowhere was a total shock, and one of the better reveals in the series. The main thing I always leave thinking is that Dancer has a very fair amount of health. Whether you have a +2 or a +10, you can kill her in good time. The main thing between fighting her early or late, however, is your health. Dancer does a lot of damage, especially her fire follow-ups in Phase 2, so if you don't have at least 25 or so vigor, you can get one shot. Dancer of the Boreal Valley is sort of like the generic Great Souls boss, but that's not a diss. She's still a great Souls boss.
Number 42, Cleric Beast. As some of you may know, the winner of the Jack Poll segment on our Patreon this month was a video covering the lore of every single Souls boss ever. I doubt you'll forget it because I originally scripted this segment without realizing that Jack introduces it himself just a few segments later. As daunting as the project sounds, we took a little solace in the knowledge that a good 30% of the segments are going to be something like, "This guy used to be a human, but then he turned into a monster and got stabbed to death on a bridge." A tragically common tale in the British Isles, I'm sure. But it only goes to show how awesome the Cleric Beast is that he can be a tutorial boss with basically zero lore and still make it into the top 50 of the entire series. The incredible music and literally visceral satisfaction of hacking his kneecaps into silly string is tough to beat. If one of you can find me someone who genuinely dislikes this boss, I will be floored.
Number 41, Malekith, the Black Blade. I may appreciate Dancer for her fair design, but Malekith? Well, actually not Malekith at all. Beast Clergyman is the worst boss in the entire series. And while I make extreme comments like that way more than I should, that is not an exaggeration. He makes the bed of chaos look like the bed of awesome sauce. He makes Gideon Ofnir look like Gideon the Goofy Goober. He makes One Reborn look like, well, that fight just stinks. If you think I was conflicted about my thoughts on this, think again. This was impossible to place. Malekith is a great boss, like literally one of my 10 favorite individual fights in all of Soulsborne, but Beast Clergyman is just terrible. No way around it. If I could go back, I'd honestly put this around number 70 to 80, maybe even number 90. As incredible as Malekith is, Beast Clergyman is so bad that I think it actually outshines him, which is crazy considering I'm a positive dude, so I almost always go with the glass half full mindset. But with this, the glass is half. Not half full, not half empty, just half. Like Gojo's hollow purple. Like yin and yang. It's so good and so bad that they cancel each other out in the middle like a steaming pile of shit and a lavender candle from Walmart. That's 3 analogies twice in this segment alone. Nailed it. Putting in Beast Clergyman right before a FromSoft classic is such a weird thing to do. There's already a Beast Clergyman named Gurok that's part of some random quest line in the outskirts of Caelid. Yeah, he fits right into Caelid. So for another one to just spawn in the climax of the endgame for no reason at all was totally pointless, and I'm certain nobody would have batted an eye if this never existed. I think, or at least I hope, that the consensus is that he's a nuisance that actively prevents, or at least negatively affects, the enjoyment and fun to be had with Malekith. Shadow of the Erdtree taught me to appreciate difficulty a lot more than I used to, but in a case like this where it's essentially a prelude mini-boss, I don't care. I want to fight the actual boss, not slog my way through some bum. And I mean slog literally. This has way too much health. Why couldn't they have given Abyss Watchers the same treatment? If you haven't gotten the gist yet, I don't like Beast Clergyman, and I love Malekith. That was a pretty good transition, right? So I've seen a lot of people online complain about Malekith, and frankly, I understand it. I do think it's frustrating how unreachable he feels. I do think it's frustrating how aggressive he feels. But I also think he is, in layman's terms, a great boss. For one, cool cutscene. I never realized until looking at a picture of him that the long triangle thing is actually his face. Malekith is a close second place behind Melania as the Elden Ring boss who most rewards rolling. He has that Sekiro sword spam after effect that he stands still during, so if you do manage to line up a perfect dodge during his slam attack, you can get in at least a hit or two. On the flip side, however, most of his attacks afflict you with that red fire that takes away a sliver of your health for a prolonged period. Unless you're tricked up with 60 or 70 vigor, you can't sacrifice getting hit more than twice in a row without expecting to be in trouble. I had a hectic ass fight with Malekith. I was doing incredibly well up until the end, and all of a sudden I managed to go like a full minute without hitting him, and by the end I was drained of all my remaining flasks. I pulled defeat from the jaws of victory, and then pulled victory from the jaws of defeat. I have no idea how I managed to beat him, but actually doing it on only my 3rd attempt with Malekith, I'm ignoring my deaths to Beast Clergyman, was an insane dopamine rush, entirely because of how annoying Beast Clergyman is. Beast Clergyman. As I've already stated in way too long of a segment, in my opinion, Malekith is an elite boss, but on a tag team with Beast Clergyman, somehow averages near the middle. Beast Clergyman is a pointless add-on done solely to enhance the fight's difficulty, and Malekith the Blackblade suffers the consequences, placing far behind where he deserves to be.
While I definitely agree that Beast Clergyman is worse than Malekith and sort of annoying, I think a lot of the challenge of that phase comes from how much of it is based on positioning and ranging rather than rolling. If you fight him like a Dark Souls 3 boss, like 90% of people do, including me a lot of the time, you're going to be getting pounded out. It's still hard as hell, I think one of the top 10 hardest in the series most likely, but it starts to at least make a little sense with that mindset. It still makes me angry seeing 70% of my health get shredded by a giant storm of pebbles though. Prick. Number 40, Demon of Hatred. While his name suggests a being defined by contempt and rage, I actually harbor love for this big lunk, in a strictly platonic sense, you animals. While some people don't dig his style of combat, which involves a lot more jumping and running than any other foe in Sekiro, I found it to be tremendously enjoyable once you get the hang of it. His awesome design and cool background only add fuel to the fire, which by the end of the fight is coming at you in the form of jump ropes and boxing rings, as if it's some sort of twisted Mario Party minigame. Running circles around him while peppering him with blows really highlights how nimble you are in this game compared to the others, and the use of grapple counters is never a mistake with how graceful and flowing they are. The sound it makes when you whack him is just fantastic too. A tremendous meaty thunk that really makes you feel like you're making progress, even though you barely are because he's so damn tanky. I can get not being a fan of this fellow on the basis of his radically different playstyle and crazy stats, but he's a top 3 boss in Sekiro for me, which means a lot considering the caliber of the foes he's up against in that division.
Number 39, Great Shinobi Owl. Do I fight my father, or some random old dude who's been following me the whole game? I think I'm gonna kill my dad. Great Shinobi Owl is one of the better lore-based decisions in the series, it being the only one that doesn't take place after you beat the game, to my knowledge. Thanks to our patrons who voted on what videos they want to see us make next, I'm currently developing a video covering the lore of every boss in Soulsborne. If you want to vote on content in the future, subscribe to our Patreon, linked in the description below. But yeah, no lore talk here. Owl is a pretty amazing fight from the perspective of mentorship. It does truly feel like fighting yourself a little bit. He uses a lot of the same tools and items, which added a lot more to this than I expected, especially the firecracker. That is one of the most fun moves to avoid. He also gives generous counter opportunities and staggers a lot more than you'd expect a man of his stature would. Once you finish phase 1, Owl falls to his knees, begging you to spare his life. When you strike, he springs back to life and initiates a surprise attack through a smoke screen, beginning phase 2. Owl's second phase is a lot trickier than his first one because he uses a lot more tricks. Get it? Phase 1 is more melee based, whereas phase 2 is mostly prosthetics and consumables with the occasional attack slip between them when you least expect it. As much as I don't want to sound like an ass, I do think changing the jump attack from a shuriken to poison is sort of pointless, as you'll have a big enough health bar by that point in the game that poison can be ignored, like how it is in Dark Souls. You acknowledge its existence, but carry on as if you don't even have it. And that's honestly a point in favor of Owl. Be harder is less of a complaint and more of a wish. He really is a great shinobi. Owl.
Number 38, Black Dragon Calamite. I think we all know this boss totally rules, but I want to hold a little test checkpoint for game design literacy here just to see where we're all at. Question: why is Calamite so awesome from a gameplay perspective? I'll toss out a hint: you can thank Hawkeye Go for making this fight playable in both senses of the word. The answer? He cannot fly! We've already talked about this with regards to Sin earlier, but flying bosses that can't find it in their heart to ground themselves every so often always end up running the risk of being tedious waiting games. Not this dragon, thankfully. Instead, they decided to invest in giving him cool psychokinetic powers and stuff. Honestly, the noise it makes kind of gives me a headache, but I think that's literally what he's doing to your character, so I let it slide under the banner of immersion. Bit of a slippery slope, though, that. I can't wait till their next game has your controller explode into shrapnel in your face whenever you eat a fireball to the head. The general aura Calamite has is tough to match. The way he strolls into the arena from off-screen and has full health despite getting a building-sized arrow to the wing moments prior. His design rules too, with the Eye of Calamity and all, making him a standout among the general population of dragonkind. Fun fight, and definitely one of the strongest in Souls 1.
I remember my first time seeing Calamite, and after hearing so much about him from everybody on the internet, facing off with this jet black Goliath with a giant red eye lived up to my every expectation. It's unfortunate that FromSoft had to get so good at making dragon fights, because I think they make people, myself included, overlook Calamite. He is a top quality boss in every way. Number 37, Vicar Amelia. Memorable. Yeah, I wrote that in all caps. This truly is the most terrifying boss fight in Soulsborne. For first time players, seeing a girl like my age morph into some freak dog used to scare the piss out of me. That first time through Bloodborne was surprisingly one of the more frightening first playthroughs I've had of a game, and a lot of that is the lighting and sound design. Vicar Amelia, with regards to fear, is the boss fight pinnacle of both. Her screams are haunting, even still after I've beaten her more times than I've gotten an A in a class at school. She also still kicks my ass from time to time, often because I enter her overconfident and underleveled, which is always a great mix. Vicar Amelia is one of the best beast bosses because she punishes better than any of her competition. One of the biggest complaints among the Bloodborne community with the beast fights is the camera. Half the time the boss is so big it either straight up blocks your view, or whatever they're doing is entirely out of frame, meaning you need to rely on audio cues or otherwise to save you. But Vicar Amelia is the perfect size. Her damage is also pretty much ideal for a beast fight too. Most of her attacks do anywhere from 30 to 60% of your health on the biggest ones and are spaced out enough to allow you constant reprieve or healing if necessary. She also frequently offers the opportunity to visceral, which is a lot more than Cleric Beast can say. Unless you use Molotovs. I do think we're reaching a point of quality with these bosses where, fair warning, the scripts will probably start to sound redundant. When something is good, it's good. Can't beat around the bush.
Number 36, Star Scourge Radahn. I like this boss, truly, but I admit I probably have less fondness for him than some. My first time going into this fight, I had no idea what to expect. My friend had told me nothing other than that he, quote, turns into an ICBM in Phase 2. Well, that he certainly does, and it is sort of the coolest thing ever. That's what really brings him this high, the presentation and flashy fireworks. From a gameplay point of view, especially if you opt to fight him without summons like I did, which I retroactively regret, he's honestly more annoying than fun. I'd even call Solo Radahn the second hardest boss in the base game of Elden Ring, although I'm sure people have a million different candidates for that honor. Sprinting up to him from the Beach D-Day style sucks when he's aiming everything at you and using the Aldrich arrows but 100 times worse all the while. Once you get up to him, he just feels really tanky and hits harder than I think he ought to. At least I can laugh at him getting owned by crippled old man Morgott if the intro cinematic is to be taken at face value. If I sound bitter, it's because every time I mention not having this fight in S tier, some guy comes up talking about how he learned gravity magic for his horse, as if I haven't heard that more than my own name.
Number 35, Lady Butterfly. As we started creeping towards the end of this series, Sekiro bosses are coming out of the ground like mole people. Before Part 6, there were 12 Sekiro bosses left, and by the end of Part 7, this one, there will be 2. I think. My point being, Sekiro on average has insanely good bosses, and for me, Lady Butterfly is the first entry to the Sekiro Mount Rushmore. She used to be my skill wall, but is now my overconfidence generator. I've beaten her first try the last 3 times I've fought her, and the psychological boost she gives me causes a lot more harm than good. If my ego was a blimp, it goes Hindenburg mode once I reach 2 monkeys, 1 man. Confidence gone forever, all because I got pooped on a bunch by an ape. Literally. Lady Butterfly is enjoyable because of her rhythmic feel, which on the one hand makes her repetitive, not necessarily in a bad way, but on the other engages you like a dance. That is, for her first phase. She'll occasionally disengage with a perilous attack, but they're very punishable, especially the one where she leaps from the air, and as a whole, those are few and far between. More often than not, she'll be doing her basic combo, and it's a fun challenge trying to no damage this phase. I never caught on to this until this playthrough for whatever reason, but a lot of the Sekiro bosses get countered by sprinting away from their big moves rather than trying to block them, sort of like how jumping in Elden Ring gives you more openings than rolling in some cases. I also really like how different the second phase feels compared to the first due to Lady Butterfly summoning spirits around the whole arena. Though Lady Butterfly herself is pretty much the same as she was in phase 1, the ghosts prolong the fight, which I'd argue is a saving grace on their part. If phase 2 was just the segments without them, Lady Butterfly would be underwhelming in my opinion, mainly due to a lack of difficulty. Though the spirits were a major risk to take, they paid off tremendously.
Number 34, Abhorrent Beast. There's technically a couple of these, but the one in the main game not having a health bar means that we're mostly concerned with the Chalice dwellers amongst their ranks. I think this fight is beloved between Jack and I for more or less the same reasons as the Cleric Beast, being that he's simply a blast to keep up with and test your mettle against. The wind attacks don't really make sense, but they're cool and give him ranged capabilities, so I won't complain, whatever floats his boat. They seem to be smarter than they look, based off one of them being able to successfully LARP as a human for however long that was going on, although it unfortunately doesn't do them much good in a fight. I respect him regardless.
Number 33, Guardian Ape. One word, slam attack. Wait a minute. 2 words, slam attack. Without this move, I think Guardian Ape would still be amazing, but I cannot understate the crack-like effects this had on our brains. That's not to undermine the rest of the fight, because Guardian Ape is a phenomenally designed boss, but this very well could be my favorite attack in any video game. Besides the poo, Guardian Ape is distinct among the other fights in Sekiro besides the Guardian Ape plus Guardian Ape fight, in that it's a break from the Samba-esque hidden deflect, and is almost entirely an offensive battle, a la older Souls bosses. Of course you still have to deflect, but it's mainly that he can't deflect you, so every movement theoretically hurts his posture meter one way or another. However, the trick is that if he gets you, odds are more likely than not that you'll either die or be very close to death, so keeping greed in check is the biggest key to victory. The second phase is a simple yet effective evolution, adding fear as the hot new mechanic. The AoEs are fair but punishing, and I think the amount by which he uses them is perfect. Otherwise, Guardian Ape is similar overall among both phases, besides the fact that he's missing his head. Oh yeah, he has a centipede in his neck that makes him immortal. Whatever floats your boat. Guardian Ape is the emotion of satisfaction crumpled up in a 3 to 4 minute boss fight.
Number 32, Father Gascoigne. As the first boss to be graced with a cutscene in Bloodborne, Gascoigne makes a great first impression with his iconic gravelly voice and Hellsing-like attire. There's also, pardon my poor British accent, the classic "beast all over the shop, you'll be one of them, sooner or later" line, which is textbook projection, but is still a cold line, so it's okay. This fight is a great example of starting off with a bang, with it including unique arena design and phase changes, as well as usable items like the music box for people who cared to explore enough of Central Yharnam, which is most people I reckon, because Central Yharnam is like one of the best areas ever. It might be a little overwhelming for novices, this fight, especially his second phase, but I think sometimes a little tough love can be just what the doctor ordered to brute force you onto the right wavelength to enjoy the rest of the game. As many will tell you, this is the last game where you want to be dodging backwards. Gascoigne makes sure to absolutely pound that notion into your head by brutalizing any poor souls foolish enough to not dodge forward and diagonal. An amusing side effect of the gravestones in the arena that many have observed by now is that the charged R2 of the transformed hunter's axe can hit him through the barriers, which can be a nice way to chip him down for anybody not confident in their ability to tango up front like a pro. He can still get cheeky gunshots off on you through the walls though, so it's not a total cheese. As just about the best introduction to Bloodborne at large you could hope for, Gascoigne is absolute peak early game boss design, and I like him very much.
Number 31, Margit the Fell Omen. The Great Wall of Elden Ring really puts the Bell Gargoyles to shame. Maybe in 15 years we'll look at Margit the same way we look at those two now. On a side-by-side list of Souls skill tests, Margit is the clear winner for best design, even though I put him at number 49 and Gascoigne at 41. I take it back. Margit's best trait is his delayed attacks, which if I remember correctly, were the gripe of practically every Elden Ring player stuck at him when the game first came out. The argument that delayed attacks are unnatural has some merit, but like it or not, practically all of Elden Ring's bosses have them, so Margit helps a lot with adjusting. Even ignoring his larger, delayed moves, the Fell Omen's moveset is quite expansive for a first boss, thanks to his Thumerian Elder-esque weapon. His arena is also supremely underrated in my opinion. I think its narrowness adds a lot more than people realize. If this was in some empty field instead, it wouldn't be as good. Oh wait, you can fight him in an empty field, and it isn't as good. All of that is cool, but what Margit's most pivotal for, to me, is serving as a reminder to level up and explore. If you're not powerful enough to your liking, you can simply leave. Obviously there is a practical upgrade limit, but if you theoretically kill every mini-boss in Limgrave, you can probably kick his ass. Margit the Fell Omen is a phenomenal introduction to the cruel, hideous, but amazing boss catalog in Elden Ring, and even on repeat playthroughs is always a rude awakening for me.
Number 30, Sur Alan. With this, we enter the true final tier of Dark Souls 2 bosses, consisting of the exact same 3 guys you probably think it does. While Sur Alan may have placed the least highly of the lot, that isn't to say we don't think he rules. Say what you will about Dark Souls 2, but the game's specific world building was honestly way better than the other 2 Dark Souls games. You really feel like the major players in world events are around and active, or at least that their activity left behind cool tangible stuff. I like knowing who's responsible for what I'm walking around in and training the guys I've been fighting and all that jazz. Finally facing the supreme general of the jackasses who were copy-pasted with abandon across the Iron Keep is a very climactic setup, and they nailed the feeling of him fighting similarly to his subordinates but with way more style and oomph. He's a man of discipline, and not just when it comes to his measured strikes and thrusts. To get a floor that clean in a grimy hellhole like Broom Tower, he'd need a will of iron and at least 3 different mental disorders, one of which has to be OCD. But hey, I'm not knocking it. They say you can tell a lot about a person based on if they make their bed or not and that sort of thing. He also has the only memorable boss theme in all of Dark Souls 2, which is awesome, and I'm very happy for him. The most common complaint you'll see about this guy is his wonky thrust hitboxes, to which I myself fell victim all the time. I have no counter-argument for that, those are pretty insane, but hey, they say friends don't keep score, right? He gets a pass on that and is allowed to just barely crack our top 30.
Number 29, Fume Knight. Fume Knight is kind of the culmination of everything I love about Dark Souls 2. Creative mechanics, great physical design, awesome lore. Debatably clunky at times, but I can overlook that. And of course, a bonfire right next to the arena. Suck on it, Ludden Zalin. Oops, Dark Souls 2 on Dark Souls 2 Crime? Fume Knight is kind of like the perfect boss for this game. Obviously, there's one more left that's just slightly better than him in both of our opinions, but the unnamed champion of Drangliak, whose name is Burnt Ivory King, benefits greatly from a spectacle never before seen and hardly matched since by anyone in the series until Elden Ring. If you take that away, I'd argue Fume Knight is the better fight. And the reason why is that he has 2 noticeably different phases that both pose their own unique challenges. The first phase is a lot faster and is one of the few times a Dark Souls 2 boss doesn't comply with the Pursuer Ultra Greatsword. He's punishing and quick enough to where I actually had to keep my greed in check, as otherwise I'd have gotten sliced up and killed in a single combo. His second phase is a bit slower with the introduction of the ultra popular Fume Ultra Greatsword. That was an unintentional ad-lib. One of the only things from Dark Souls 2 to make it into Souls 3, a game which tried its hardest to wipe its prequel's existence off the map. He's one of 5 Dark Souls 2 bosses alongside Dark Lurker, Sin, Burnt Ivory King, and Sir Alan that in my opinion always pose a genuine threat. And the tension that comes with real stakes is a feeling so few and far between in Souls 2 that it only brings out positive emotions for me. Sorry to disappoint guys, Ludden Zalin have no health. Start using bright bugs. Fume Knight is one of the few things to come from Dark Souls 2 that mostly everybody appreciates, and I think that on its own shows his quality.
I love this guy, but I wish he didn't molest your stamina meters so hard. Having no stamina to attack with after dodging a 3-swing combo was so lame that it makes me cry. He should calm down and stop doing that so much. Number 28, Dragon Slayer Armor. This fight is absolutely badass and a sleeper hit from the Souls 3 All-Star catalog. For starters, the music is one of the best themes in the game, at least until the second phase where it gets worse and less intense for some reason. But that aside, I love the gameplay first and foremost, so I'll talk a bit more about that side of things. It's essentially an empty suit of armor being controlled puppet style by the Lordran butterflies, the enormous not very butterfly looking things off to both sides of the bridge. To start off, all you have to worry about is the armor itself, which is pretty active and uppity even if it isn't so great at landing attacks on target. It's very satisfying running laps around it and getting cheeky blows in while it's still attacking, so that's a point in its favor, really. The second phase adds projectile attacks from the butterflies themselves, which can be blocked by the fountain in the middle or rolled through if you really get caught off guard. The laser beam move is neat but unlikely to nail you unless you really tune out, so it's more for show than taking heads. The setting of high above Lordran, sunset visible and all, does wonders for the A word that needs no further mention in this series. Awesome boss, very fun, I like it.
Number 27, Mohg the Omen. This Mohg is similar to what the Corrupted Monk is in Sekiro, a purposefully disappointing prelude to a far more fleshed out final version that shows up later in the game. Though the use of disappointing here is with a purely positive connotation. I'm disappointed because I don't want the fight to be so suddenly over. I want it to evolve and truly challenge me. Interestingly, this is one of the great fights in history, and it exists in an underground sewer overrun by gamma ray crawfish and poop slugs, and ends before it can even become its true form. On that note, this fight is narratively genius. Not only is Mohg a good guy now, but his reasons behind creating an illusion to guard the frenzied flame are justified, moral, and cool as hell. Gonna save all that for the lore video. Subscribe to the Patreon. Just realized how long that video is gonna be though. Damn it. Anyways, Mohg is truly a boss's boss. He packs a challenge but is simple to learn, and I think what he does with regards to setting you up for success for the real battle with the Lord of Blood later on is underappreciated. A lot of his blood magic can feel frustrating at times, but I tend to think that without those moves, he'd be a nothing fight. Sort of like Osiris, he just exists and do some cool melee stuff. But because he has the blood magic, it opens up a whole new dimension to the fight. Amazing as he may be, the Omen is ultimately no Lord of Blood. Although, wait a minute, no, he is. He's half the Lord of Blood. And for only being half of a fight, frankly, he's damn good. But, and this is pretty corny, he's not good enough to crack the top 25.
Number 26, Morgott, the Omen King. Morgott is a very tragic character in every possible sense. Lore-wise, he tortures himself by acting as the chief enforcer of the Golden Order, a concept that hates his very existence by virtue of his Omen status. An optimist would call him a selfless, altruistic hero, and a pessimist would call him whatever the Omen equivalent of an Uncle Tom is. Maybe he can be both at once. But on the gameplay front, the tragedy is that his threat level is, shall we say, not quite lore accurate. His attacks are insanely cool and do decent damage, but the problem is that he simply dies too fast. I tried fighting him at Soul level 1 and still beat him third try with a Star Fist plus 14. He just can't handle the weaponry you have at that point in the game. He has less health than the Draconic Tree Sentinel, or so it feels. There are the makings of a perfect 10 out of 10 boss in here, with him being one of the best characters FromSoft has ever made and a moveset as memorable as it is enjoyable to avoid. That opening cutscene is one of my favorite boss introductions ever, with how you can tell his opinion on each demigod based simply on his tone of voice. Morgott is totally killing it on so many fronts, but he's a total wet napkin in a fight. It ends in under 45 seconds in most cases, seriously. He needs to stagger less and get a doubled HP pool, I'm 100% not joking. But in his current, likely final state, Morgott is tragically just shy of the top 25. A cruel fate, but not altogether out of keeping with his character. He can rest easy knowing that he at least has more aura than all his siblings minus Mesmer.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and check out our awesome Patreon. Seriously, the rewards are great, the community is great, and it'd be greatly appreciated. Be sure to check in very soon for the second to last part of this series, and with that said, deuces.